Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Milan Shrevinsky. Iran claims it had successfully attacked a US airbase in Bahrain in an airstrike early Tuesday morning. The US has yet to confirm or deny reports of these strikes. Iran's claims come as President Trump issued a warning in response to the Iranian strike on the US embassy in Riyadh. A major oil refinery located in the eastern city of Ras Tanura, Saudi Arabia, has reportedly been destroyed in the strikes. Iran has also fired missiles towards Israel, which in turn retaliated against Hezbollah strongholds in Lebanon. Explosions were also heard in Doha, Qatar. As of late Monday night, the US military said it had struck more than 1,250 targets in Iran and destroyed 11 Iranian ships. Marco Rubio told reporters on Monday that Washington was aware of an impending Israeli military operation against Iran, prompting the US to take preemptive action. The US State Secretary explained that Iran would retaliate against the US if the regime in Tehran came under attack by anyone, including by Israel, and so President Trump made the decision to strike first to avoid higher casualties.
There's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the President made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed.
The US Embassy in Riyadh has been hit by 2 Iranian drones, Saudi Arabia's defense ministry said in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Reports indicate the attack caused minor damage and resulted in a fire breaking out on the premises. Despite black smoke seen rising above the facility, the fire was described as small by people familiar with the situation. No injuries were reported after the incident. The Defense Ministry spokesperson also revealed that Saudi Arabia intercepted and destroyed 8 drones near Riyadh and Al-Harj on Tuesday. US President Donald Trump was quick to comment, telling a News Nation reporter that the US plan for retaliation against Iran for the strikes on the embassy would soon be made clear. According to Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, the reason why Iran continues attacking American diplomatic posts in the region is that Tehran is unable to inflict damage on US territory itself. The Iranian official made the comment in a televised address on Monday, adding that the affected countries should pressure the US to explain its reasoning for waging what he called an unjust and illegal war.
We don't seek to make the war regional. It will become regional simply because there are US bases and facilities spread across our region. When the United States attacks us, they have access to our territory and can strike with all kinds of missiles and aircraft. We cannot reach their territory, but we can reach their bases. I believe those bases are legitimate targets. Instead of pressuring the Islamic Republic of Iran to explain why it is attacking US targets on their soil, they should pressure the Americans to explain why they initiated and waged this unjust, illegal war without cause, dragging the region into this situation.
The first 127 Italians stranded in the Middle East have landed at the Rome Fiumicino airport after the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs organized a chartered flight in order to get them out of harm's way. Tens of thousands of European citizens are trying to leave the region.
We went on vacation to Dubai. We were in the hotel, then they hit a nearby building with a bomb. They moved us to the basement where we stayed in the garage. Then, in the end, we had this idea to take the car and go to Oman.
What was supposed to be the best holiday ever has turned into the worst.
I arrived in Oman because it was a safer country. I was supposed to leave on Saturday the 28th, but then all this happened. First, I would like to thank the Italian embassy for their help. However, I also want to condemn the cost of the return trip, which was 1,500 euros per ticket. Many people were left stranded because of the high cost.
According to the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there are over 10,000 Poles currently in the Middle East. Ministry spokesperson Maciej Wiewiór has shared recommendations for Polish travelers with TVP World.
We do believe that the most important right now, at this moment, is the safety of our citizens. So in certain regions, like in Israel, for example, it is possible to leave Israel through Egypt. On the other hand, in places like Qatar or Dubai, it is much safer to stay in the place of shelter and not leave those places. We still have missiles, we still have drones flying over, they are being shot down, so it's much safer to stay where it is safe, in the place of shelter.
French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that Paris intends to develop its own nuclear deterrence policy that will be distinct from that of NATO, but would remain fully complementary to it. One of the goals of this policy would be to develop a nuclear framework designed to allow for cooperation with other European nations.
Warsaw is holding talks with Paris and close European allies on an advanced nuclear deterrence program. Poland's Prime Minister has said after President Emmanuel Macron announced France would allow its nuclear-capable aircraft to be temporarily deployed to partner nations.
Poland is in talks with France and the group of closest European allies on the program of advanced nuclear deterrence. We are arming up together with our friends so that our enemies will never dare to attack us.
A number of European countries have expressed an interest in coming under France's nuclear umbrella amid a rising Russian threat as the decades-long reliance on Washington's nuclear protection comes increasingly under question.
This effort would come in addition to NATO's nuclear mission, in which, I remind you, we do not take part. The advanced deterrence we are proposing is a distinct effort with its own value and is perfectly complementary to NATO's, both strategically and technically. Beyond our British and German partners already mentioned, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, Greece, Sweden and Denmark will join.
New deployments would not involve shared decision-making powers, the French president said, emphasizing that the decision to use France's nuclear deterrent would rest with Paris. France is the only European Union member to possess a nuclear capability. The only other European country to have the weapons is the UK, which no longer is in the EU, but like France, is a member of NATO.
In Brussels, European leaders are grappling with Donald Trump's military intervention in Iran, largely treading carefully over the initial attack, but firmly condemning the retaliation by the regime in Tehran. The conflict landed on the EU's doorstep on Monday, with a suspected Iranian drone hitting the runway of a British Air Force base in Cyprus. Laura Hazanov reports.
The European Union is waking up to a post-Khomeini world with tensions rising fast and the prospect of a wider regional conflict edging closer to home. Most European leaders have reacted cautiously to the joint US-Israeli operation that killed Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei, while fully condemning Tehran's retaliatory drone and missile strikes across the region. But the war is already drawing Europe closer. Greece has said it is sending military frigates along with F-16 fighter jets to Cyprus in response to a supposed drone strike on a British RAF base. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has convened an emergency security college meeting.
And my third point is the stability of the region is of the utmost importance. The only lasting solution is a diplomatic one. And this means a credible transition for Iran, the definite hold to both the nuclear and ballistic programs, and an end to destabilizing activities in the region.
But Spain has taken a different approach. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has been the only EU leader to fully condemn the joint operation, calling it unilateral and warning that it risks another drawn-out Middle Eastern conflict.
One must oppose a war launched without authorization from the United States Congress, from the United Nations Security Council, and as I have said before, one that violates international law, and recognize that there is always room for a negotiated solution, instead of being dragged into a devastating display of weapons as the only possible outcome.
France, Germany and the UK say that they were not involved in the strikes. However, they have warned that they are ready for decisive defensive action if Iran continues its attacks. Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, is set to meet with US President Donald Trump in Washington on Tuesday. From Brussels for TVP World, Laura Khazanov.
According to President Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine is prepared to move the planned peace talks to Switzerland if the ongoing hostilities in the Middle East prevent the negotiations from taking place in Abu Dhabi. The Ukrainian leader made the comment during a Ramadan celebration honoring Ukraine's Muslim soldiers.
The peace talks between Ukraine and Russia should take place between the 5th and 8th or 9th of this month. In principle, we had planned to hold the negotiations in Abu Dhabi. This was the proposal from the American side. However, if events in the Gulf shift the date or location, then we are prepared to meet in another city or country. As I mentioned today, we are prepared to meet in Switzerland or Turkey. Turkey and Switzerland are both possible venues, as were the Emirates.
America's strikes on Iran have sent a jolt through global markets. Oil prices have already surged by almost 10%, and European stocks swung sharply as investors assessed the threats of a wider war and any impact on critical energy routes. Jakub Kapiszewski has more.
The scenario feared by every oil trader is unfolding in front of our eyes. An attack on Iran, a country with the power to block the Strait of Hormuz, a critical passage through which 1/5 of the global oil supply passes every day. Given the circumstances, it should come as no surprise that the price of the commodity powering the global economy shot up by almost 10% on Monday morning, even though the market has already priced in some of the risk involved in the confrontation with Iran due to the build-up of US forces in the region in the weeks leading up to the attack.
The movements today are at least moderate for the time being. However, it is to be feared and very likely that the oil price will rise significantly.
More dire news came from the gas market, where Dutch front month futures, considered Europe's gas benchmark, traded 35% higher at roughly €43 per megawatt hour by 5 p.m. European stock exchanges dipped on Monday, some including Germany's DAX and France's CAC 40 by more than 2%.
The DAX got off to a weak and nervous start, and the reason for this is obvious, of course. It's the conflict in the Middle East, Iran, and the fear of how it could escalate further.
Disruptions in the Middle East may also have an impact on Central Europe and Poland. The country gets more than half of its oil supply from Saudi Arabia. But Poland's sole petroleum company Orlen said on Sunday there's no immediate risk to the country's oil supply.
Saudi oil is sent to Poland from Yanbu, a big oil terminal on the Red Sea coast, so it bypasses the Persian Gulf completely. And this terminal can process 7 million barrels a day, so it's quite big.
And the market appreciates that, with the company's shares rising by more than 5% today. Another issue is gas supply, as Poland gets some of it from Qatar in the form of LNG or super-chilled gas. But even here, the exposure is limited. Out of 81 shipments the country received in 2025, only 17 were from Qatar, so experts remain calm.
The winter season is drawing to a close, so demand for natural gas is lower. What's more, Poland has enough of the fuel left in storage to cover 30 days of demand, so there shouldn't be any problems.
But even Paszkowski says longer disruptions in the Middle East can have unpredictable consequences.
And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us here on TVP World.